You know, you don't really review a Lars von Trier film. The most you can really do the next day is just kind of give a status report to let people know you're still alive and not drowning yourself in a pool. And last night, the whole team of us, because our camera operator, Joe, couldn't be there by himself, we joined him to see The House That Jack Built, the newest film by Lars von Trier, and the director's cut, which was a one-night screening in select theaters across the United States. It was a good movie, that's to be expected. It was beautiful, that's to be expected. But here's the biggest question that I think anybody who has seen or is curious about seeing a Lars von Trier film would like to ask. But do I need to see it?
I don't know what to say.
Lars von Trier. Well, Jeff said last night at the Loft von Trier, but I've heard it both ways. Lars von Trier is a Dutch filmmaker who has made such films as Antichrist, as Nymphomaniac. He's been making films for a long time, about 20 years now, and he's become sort of renowned for his incorporation of sex and violence and some thematics that are uncomfortable. Uncomfortable both because they kind of push the boundaries of what's acceptable in film, and uncomfortable because sometimes they're just sad. And he's a famously manic depressive artist, and Melancholia is probably the best example of what it is to go through depression and feel like your world is collapsing around you. And anytime you watch a Lars von Trier film, it is an experience. It is a depressing, and it is sometimes a heart-wrenching experience, and sometimes it is a shocking experience. So why do we put ourselves through that? A lot of what I described, while scary, is what art is supposed to be. It's supposed to push boundaries. It's supposed to make us question these kinds of things. It's supposed to make us question what we'll sit through, what's entertaining, and what's just voyeurism and what they used to call pornography and evil. And I think part of what works for Lars von Trier is he's a fantastic cinematographer. He's a fantastic visual storyteller. And when you've got that level of technical prowess, I think we as an audience will tolerate a lot more. So coming into this film, what were we expecting? I don't know. We had Antichrist, where Willem Dafoe's big dick gets hit by a brick. We had Nymphomaniac, which is an 8-hour fest. And then we had The House That Jack Built, because Lars von Trier said, the last few movies made you guys uncomfortable. I want to take a run at a serial killer story. His first film with Matt Dillon. You might know Matt Dillon from The Outsiders or My Bodyguard.
I can't believe those were the two Matt Dillon references you gave.
I should know more. I think that's Angelica's favorite actor, which is kind of a weird favorite actor for a person our age.
Who doesn't love Matt Dillon?
So The House That Jack Built is, at its core, a film about the main character played by Matt Dillon, who is recounting stories from his career as a killer to a man named Virgil. And the film is split up into 5 main sections, which are each basically around a killing and an epilogue that resolves the overarching meta-story about who he's talking to and where they are. Characterization, dialogue, and exploring concepts is really Lars von Trier's wheelhouse. And what makes that kind of exciting and what makes that very effective is film at its core and art at its core is most resonant when it makes you feel something, when it projects something out at you as an inanimate object, whether it makes you feel happy or sad, whether you're laughing or whether you're crying, whether you're scared or whether you're disgusted. Now the real issue is anybody with a camera can make a Serbian film. And the fact that that's gross really just speaks to the fact that, yeah, I know what's going to gross you out, and if I do it enough and I push it enough in your face, it's going to make you uncomfortable. Does it have a point to it? Is it told well? Is it shot well? Requiem for a Dream probably has, to me, the biggest compliment that I can give a film, and that's that I think it's an amazing film. I think that everybody should see it, but I don't know if I have it in me to watch it again, even within a few years. And Lars von Trier is very that way. It's gorgeous filmmaking. It's really interesting use of metaphor told visually. It's really interesting character development. And he'll put you in the darkest, deepest regions of the human spirit to really communicate ideas that are complicated, complex, and at their core, very scary. The House That Jack Built is getting a lot of hype for. Some people walked out of it at Cannes. Some people are saying it's, overly violent. Yeah, people walked out at Cannes, but those who stayed gave it a very long-standing ovation. And that's Lars von Trier in a nutshell. Some people hate it, some people love it. And I tend to be in the latter camp. But I was there with our cameraman, Joe. Joe is always a little bit finicky when it comes to gore and violence, a little shaky on that front. He had to cover his eyes a bit. And then his wife, who's not so much of a baby. She's a badass though. And also, and my girlfriend, who was really into it as well. What does all of this mean? Was the film good? Yeah, the film is great. You've got moments of like fantastic comedy. There's something about somebody who is so willing to get their hands dirty and get so ugly in storytelling. Those are the people who really understand comedic timing. The people who can make you squirm are the people that can make you laugh. The House That Jack Built has at least one incredibly funny sequence where this character is trying to clean up a murder scene despite his OCD. And it's funny. It's just genuinely funny. And what's nice about a Von Trier film is I could feel that roller coaster building where things were happy and things were kind of funny and morbidly so. And he's kind of got the audience bought in. We know he's a killer now. We've gone through some lighter sequences. And once we get to the peak, you just kind of realize things are going to get really bad really fast. And they do. And so without spoiling anything, I want to get into people who like walked out and people who say it's gratuitous and people who say that it's too much. I get why certain things that occur in this film are too much. What Lars von Trier does to me that kind of sort of justifies the horrible things he includes is there's always a point to it, or there's always a story being told, or the character is aware of how reprehensible his actions are. And whether it's this or Nymphomaniac, which had a kind of a very similar setup where the main character is explaining their life story and kind of what happened, there's always a feedback loop of, here's a horrible thing that happened, let's reflect on it. And it doesn't let you forget, it is a discussion. It's a discussion about violence. It's a discussion about desensitization. It's a discussion about what makes a truly awful person. What's the line between creating a protagonist who's a bad guy and creating an anti-hero? You know, if you look at American Psycho, for instance, Patrick Bateman has many admirable qualities. But the point of American Psycho is that despite all of that, he's an empty and hollow and worthless and pathetic character. And I think American Psycho communicates that. But that film even had a very similar circumstance to, for instance, Wall Street, where Oliver Stone is trying to create a bad guy in Gordon Gekko, who ended up becoming the face for the 80s. And the greed is good monologue was supposed to be seen as a bad thing, but people loved it. And it's a great example of how really good storytelling and ineffectively really communicating somebody's nature or giving us the context to really judge them and their actions leads to us kind of sympathizing more with a bad guy. And this film knows it. The House That Jack Built plays off of all those beats. The first hour or so, it's manipulating you to get you on board with that character so that once you are complicit and an accomplice in what's going on, it pulls back that curtain and says, by the way, this is who that character is. This is what you're signing up for. And this is the reality of what you've sort of been laughing at and enjoying. And just because of context or who the victims are, you might feel a different way, but shouldn't you have felt bad the whole time? So it asks interesting questions. And really part of why the movie works so well is because Matt Dillon is fantastic in it. He's just really into this character, and you can tell that it was an interesting and transformative experience. What works so well is not just his acting, and not just the direction, obviously, that gets him to that point, but kind of that audience's expectation, right? I mean, Matt Dillon for years has been someone who typically is a good guy, or when he's a bad guy, he's like a greaser. And he subverts a lot of your expectations.
I'd be a bad guy if I said no.
By this point, I feel like I've effectively communicated how intense the films are, that they can be very gory. And really, when you're sitting with a Lars von Trier movie, you are staring into the void, and the void is looking back at you. It's an existentially dark and depressing and difficult thing to get through, but at least for me, and even Joe, who could make it through this, it can be very rewarding. Is it as horrifying and grotesque as people were saying it was, compared to the abortion scene in Nymphomaniac, compared to the scissors scene in Antichrist? To me, this film was very tame by comparison. Are there bad things? Yeah. Do I know what's gonna get cut out in the theatrical version? I can guess. But for me, when I watch something in film, I'm more off-put and made uncomfortable when I see senseless, pointless agony. That to me is uncomfortable, and that to me is not enjoyable. This is a really simple should you see it or should you not. If you like Lars von Trier, I think it's probably his most digestible, comprehensive film. I think it's beautiful as always. I think it's really well acted. I think the script is really tight. If you don't like Lars von Trier, dude, you know what I'm gonna tell you. You're not going to enjoy it. Just don't do it. Don't do it to yourself. If you're squeamish, if you're really sensitive to violence and gore, or if you need something upbeat in your life, certainly don't go see it. But if you like Lars von Trier, if you like horror movies, if you like existential dramas that really kind of deal with ideas about what it is to be a piece of shit, this character really gets into that. And I think that that's Lars von Trier's question throughout his life. And I mean that with no disrespect. What does it mean to be and not be a piece of shit? And all these films deal with that. So this is a very fitting contribution to his catalog, and I'm very glad that I saw it. I do, however, now need to go take a shower because, Jesus, that movie.
Also, can you make a comment about people who make noise during a goddamn movie?
If you're watching, I have questions for you. Yeah, you. You were sitting in the back row with your girlfriend. She, of course, while you both made noise, left her phone on, and was the kind of person who couldn't reach into her Mary Poppins bag fast enough to find it.
Sorry. Oh, so sorry.
So sorry. Sorry. Get the phone! But that's not my problem. I'm fine with her. Because you know what she did? She turned that shit off. But I have so many questions for you, sir. You sat there, and as things would unfold on the screen, you would go, ha ha! Nobody laughs like that, for one thing. Who makes those noises? You're at a movie! What are you doing with your life? If you see an old John Candy film and he makes a comment, do you go, ha! No, you don't. You laugh, because that's what people do. You freak. The house that Jack built, was it scary? Yeah. Was it gory? Yeah. You were the scariest goddamn part of it, you monster. Huh. Ow.